Hello everyone, my name is Marion with DTM Real Talk Channel. It's the channel that you can tune into, have the ability to listen to the thoughts of others about topics all over the world that touch every one of our lives. Everybody goes through basically the same thing. There is nothing new under the sun. So if you're going through, someone else has already been there. Maybe you can find hope. Maybe it's a pathway that can set you on the right road just by tuning in. So DTM Real Talk, just keeping it real. And if you like it, like us at the bottom, subscribe, and let us know just how we helped you. Just keeping it real. Nothing but love.
Welcome. This is DTM Real Talk, and we're just keeping it real tonight. Guys, we have been rolling with mental health for about 5 weeks, and it's been very informative. Thank you all for the comments. I'm thankful that you're getting some insight, some light, and moving to the next level in your lives as it relates to depression or mental illness. Now, if this is your first time chiming in, please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate you, and I love you to the moon and back. Tonight, we are going to revisit Tim's story. If you heard him, if you didn't hear him, check him out. But this is something I want to say before we begin. One of the things that I've been hearing with all of our guests, one of the coping mechanisms that I've been hearing with some of all of our guests, find something that you love to do if you're depressed, and also find someone you can share with how you're feeling. Talk about your struggles. Most of all, don't forget and don't hesitate to get professional help. That's important, because some of it is genetics, some of it can be chemical imbalances in the brain, and some of it can be other traumas, as we've been talking about this past 5 weeks. So seek professional help. Now let's revisit Tim's story. He's a grown man now, and Tim seems to be on the right track. He's married, has his first child, and he's enjoying a successful career. Now, you guys know back in the 80s, making $800 a week was quite a lot of money. But despite his good job, he didn't have any credit of his own. His dad actually had all the credit. So Tim, as we know, wasn't just abusive to him, but he was also abusive to his mother. And Tim had to watch that. He had to witness that, folks. So when he came home, remember, he's married. When he came home, he found out that his dad was still holding a grudge against him for running away at age 15. Yet, he's decided to ask his dad for help to get him, establish his credit. But that didn't go the way it was planned. His dad actually tricked him into believing he co-signed for a car to help him build his credit, to find out that his father had purchased a car outright, and Tim still didn't have credit. He thought he did. And if that wasn't enough, he faced more challenges. His marriage was under attack. His mother-in-law was in his wife's ear. His family turned against him. I mean, the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness he had from a childhood start resurfacing themselves. Remember, I told you guys, if this is unaddressed, it's going to resurface itself, either in your marriage, and your relationships, and your workplace. I'm telling you, unforgiveness, depression, all those things, those traumatic events that happen in our lives, if they're not addressed, they will resurface themselves in another way. So folks, here's Tim.
I was so despondent as a result of what was going on, and everything kind of like came to a head at that point. I tried to commit suicide.
Right. So you had traumatic event after traumatic event starting at age 2 that was never really dealt with. Yeah.
That never was dealt with. Now I'm grown thinking, okay, things are going to change. And so, so now we get to this point to where you feel like you don't have no other options. You feel like your life is over.
Yeah.
And nothing's going to get better. And when you make the decision, you've been going through severe depression your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And now the one good thing that you have is now that's falling apart.
Right.
Your marriage is falling apart. And then you decide, I don't want to be here anymore. And so at the point to where you do the act of ending your life, and it could be in different forms, that's a mental process
Yes.
that cannot be ignored. And the
Right.
reason why I say that, because that was traumatic.
Right.
I took a big bottle of Tylenol, and I took the whole bottle, and I started walking down the street.
Mm.
And when the aspirins kicked in,
Sure.
I collapsed
Wow.
in the middle of the street. And because I didn't look like I was a drug addict, like I was a homeless person, I didn't look. Whoever it was who came to my aid,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't even have cell phones back then.
Right.
They went to the phone booth and they dialed EMS, and they came and got me.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital, and so I'm in the hospital. My parents are notified, but I'm a grown man.
Right.
My estranged wife, they were all notified. He's in the hospital, tried to commit suicide, pumped his stomach, and I'm okay. They get all that out.
Right.
And fortunately, they got me help. The hospital staff, I remember they, came in, they were talking to me. I remember that. And so there was a level of stability that came to me. And so my father said, after the suicide attempt, oh, he just trying to get attention. I became so outraged
I'm
at
sure.
what he said that, now you got to hear this. If I had a gun, I would have put it to my head and pulled the trigger.
Mm.
Because I already attempted it once.
Right.
And now all of this hurt and this trauma is coming back to this point in time where you attempt to take your life. You don't succeed, and then a family member says something so insensitive that it outrages you to the point to now you want to commit a violent act in taking your life. So that gives you an insight to where you understand when people do things like Chesley Chris. And the whole story hasn't come out, and it may not come out, but I'm able to recognize it, because when you jump off of a 30-story building or a 9-story building, you can't come back from that.
That's right.
That's a violent act.
Yes.
Very violent. When you put a gun in your head and you pull the trigger, that's a violent act. When you hang yourself, that's a violent act. And what that's telling me,
had to go through a mental process to figure that out.
To figure that out, to go through that.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you as an individual go through that, it can create in you what's called post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
So for example, when Don Cornelius, Soul Train, he killed himself.
Right.
I went through that process. I literally was grieving. Never met Don Cornelius, just watched the show.
Right.
When Robin Williams hung himself, went through it again.
Yeah.
Anthony Bourdain, I used to love his show. I can't watch his show to this very day.
Wow.
I used to watch his show all the time because he could travel the world, he could eat all this exotic food, and I just loved that show. I loved him and the life he was living.
Yes.
And didn't know that he was going through some mental health issues.
Yes.
And then hung himself, went through it again. And so on January 30th, I'm waiting for being in LA, a LA boy, that was the NFC Championship game for the Rams and the 49ers. And then I hear this information over the news that a young woman jumped to her death in New York City. And then come to find out it's Chesley Chris,
Yes.
Miss USA. And immediately I went into this post-traumatic stress. It took me back to the point to where I made the attempt. Now you know you got a problem. Now you know you got a problem. You're not. So now it's like, oh wow. Now it's like you don't want to do that. You're 40 years removed from your attempt.
Yes.
But you're back. You're right back, and you understand the mental process that you go through to do the act that could potentially end your life.
Wow.
And it gives you a different insight that people, even licensed therapists, can't figure it out.
Yes.
Because if you remember, her mother said that was not her first attempt. She attempted it before. But when she was reading her last text message, she didn't read the whole text message because I believe that Chesley, she put the trauma that she went through that caused her to go through this high functioning depression. She put it in that last text message.
Wow.
But her mother is not going to expose her family to what Chesley went through and why she became depressed, severely depressed. There is a cause, and suicide is the effect. And so you recognize that. So that was the awakening for me, January 30th, because now the news is coming out and they're flooding us with, you know, the Miss USA, she's Miss USA, and now you're feeling some kind of way.
Right.
And now that forces you to have to deal with your trauma because you went through the same thing, although you didn't succeed. And there's a lot of people that didn't succeed. One of my favorite singers, Phyllis Hyman. I'm like, oh, you see, and you know, so you hold these people who did what you did but didn't survive it. But your goal is number one, how do I get better?
Right.
How do I deal with my I say mental health care? Yeah. And how can I help others?
Right.
And the only way you can do that is you have to be able to articulate it and then share it with the world.
And so able to, I thank God for you right now. Let me pause you. You have to be able to own that. And you owned it. You identified it. You not only owned it and identified it, you embraced it because this is real. This is happening to me.
It's happening today.
Yes, you relived it. You relived it.
And this is 40 years after the fact. So post-traumatic stress, severe depression.
Yes.
And it can be chemical, you know, changes in your brain. Circumstances can trigger it. But your goal is to be healthy mentally. And so you have to deal with it. So that was the final event that, you know, that motivated me to have to face it straight on, not to ignore it, even though I have been talking to my daughter. She doesn't understand, very smart, you know, and it's like, okay, and I call it self-care. You know, sometimes you have to be able to self-diagnose. And when we talk about high functioning depression, I'm a high functioning depressive type of individual.
You don't look like what you've been through, my brother.
Well, but okay, but think about it. And we use our references.
Yes.
You look at Chesley, what did you see in her? You saw a smiling face.
That's right.
You saw a bubbly person, always woo, 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 beauty queen. You saw all of that.
Yes.
And it all was a front.
Yes.
To what was really going on in her mind and in her heart. She was hurting. Now so the last post that I did is like you know, an emotional self help kit for depression.
Okay.
So the question is, what were my coping mechanisms?
Okay.
Because I went through what I went through, and this is why I mentioned Don Cornelius, because as a little kid, my sister can dance. Because what I realized is, because I did it with everything that was in me and I did it well, it released those endorphins that gave me a sense of well-being in the midst of chaos, because I'm sweating. I got my skate rag and I'm out there and I'm doing my thing for at least for 2 or 3 hours. And that was my hobby. And so when I came to Texas, I kind of grew out of the skating thing, but then I started swinging out. And I don't know, if you don't know about me, and I'm the quiet one. So if you heard about Jerry Palmer, the king of swing, we learned how to swing out at the same time.
Yes, indeed.
Steppers. They done made a career out of it. I didn't. But dealing with the ongoing depression of being lonely. You remember she said that?
Yes.
Because of the loneliness. She was alone. We understand that.
Yeah.
What is your coping mechanism because of the loneliness? There is something that you have to do that you love that will help you cope with those periods of loneliness, because that's when the depression sits in. And once you do it once you commit in your mind that I'm in my life, that doesn't leave you. And you play with the thought, even though you don't do it. And so the other coping mechanism is, and I think I may have told you this, I always fast around this time of the year. And I would fast for 40 days. And it just happened to coincide. Now, you know, I'm a Christian, but it would coincide with Ramadan.
Right.
So, and I had a lot of friends who are Muslim. And so we kind of had that in common, but they would fast for 30 days. I would start 10 days before them, because Jesus fasted for 40 days.
Right.
And so that was a form of discipline for me, to where I would control my flesh and not eat anything or put anything in my mouth from sun up to sundown. So those were my coping mechanisms to deal with my depression. And so I would encourage people, if they're going through that develop, your survival kit or your emotional kit, and to deal with the depression that you're going through. Because when you get to the point to where you say, I don't want to go on any further, you have to have something in place that can dispel that thought.
Amen.
And so, and typically it's something that you enjoy doing. And so now, being a preacher, I put out things that's encouraging every day. And I have an issue, just like I can do daily studies in the scriptures, the video version. I've done that before, but I'm going off of I call those sermonettes, and I'm kind of following that script, and it's usually about 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and I try to keep it short. So if people wanted to tune in, they could tune in on that.
Right.
But every day you're getting something positive from me. Well, that's a coping mechanism as well, because I have to study to prepare those.
Yes.
But now this form is good because this is an interchange. I'm telling you my story naturally.
Right.
And, and I could put an emphasis on it and so forth and so on.
And people not only can hear you, but they can see you. And the scripture says people are won by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, and the word of our testimonies. And they won't know unless we tell them.
Unless we tell them. So I say that there's hope. And the thing is, and then I'm sad and at the same time, I understand our God. I know he's a loving God. I know individuals have made decisions that have ended their life. And even in all of that, I trust God.
Amen.
You know, I trust him. I don't judge it, because you know how we come up. Well, is that the unforgivable sin? I throw that thought out the window, because that's not in my authority of purview to where I could even say anything about that,
Right.
other than I trust God. But because we do have a moral code, I don't want to do anything that is going to be against him or that he doesn't approve. So what do? If you see this, if you notice every time, if you look at my posts, what do you see? You see two parts, right? Well, what that represents is my ministry, Merging Hearts.
Right.
And that's the name, Merging Hearts Ministries. And so it's about showing love to people.
Yes.
It's about reaching out to them in the area of their hurt.
Yes, right.
And being able to effectively minister to them. And when they know that you have a shared experience and they're listening to it, well, they can develop those survival skills, because
themselves, right.
What was that song by CeCe Winans? You are loved. You are absolutely loved.
Amen.
So
Amen.
that's a message that that I know that God has given me to preach and to put out there. But then have a demonstration of it. What do we talk about? John chapter 13, 34 and 35.
Right.
A new commandment I give you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. And by this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
That's it right there. That's it. That's it right
when
there.
you are working in your purpose, see, I can be depressed, but I can live with the depression. You know, that message had to get out, and I'm glad you invited me to share it, because in sharing it is therapeutic.
That is correct.
and people can hear.
I see the freedom halo going over your head. More freedom halo.
And that's what we do. So listen.
No, you listen. No, you listen.
They go through it. You see, people think that preachers got it all together. No, they may seem like they got it all together. They don't have it all together. But the only way they could overcome their issues is they got to share their testimony.
That's right. They got to be real. You have to be transparent. Transparency is the way to go. And I want to thank you 100 times over for your boldness and your humility, because it takes humility to share what you just shared about yourself. So thank you for doing that. And I guess what I do want to say is give the good folks what advice would you say to the good folks out there that may be experiencing depression and don't know what it is? You just described it through your story, the things that you were feeling. So give them one little advice before we sign off, because we just keep it real. Your time.
Yeah, you have to have, and I'm gonna just call it, you have to have a survival kit.
Okay.
A survival kit. And a lot of times we think is, well, brother, you just need to pray. That's not what I needed, because I was praying anyway and I was feeling horrible.
Right.
And I would always continue to pray. But I needed to do something else that I enjoyed doing. And because of that, that became part of my emotional survival kit.
Gotcha.
I would go skating, I would go dancing, because those were physical things. It could be as simple like what you do every day. You go to the gym. It's the same effect, because now you're working out, you're sweating.
Right, that's my peace time.
Right, see, that's your peace time, and it releases those endorphins, and I call them the well-being endorphins, because you're taking care of your body. Now you feel good. And don't let people get into your ear. You do have to have your core individuals, your go-to people. Like my daughter is my go-to person, but I have to limit that only because she doesn't fully understand everything, because
Right.
she has her own baggage. But to pick out those individuals that you can talk to and just say, hey, I'm feeling a certain kind of way,
Sure.
wanted to talk to you real quick, and they would say something encouraging. We all have celebrities that we like, that they're constantly putting out positive stuff, because I listen to Steve Harvey. He's
Right.
funny, but by and large, the advice that he gives is good and it's encouraging. There's other individuals as well. So I tune into that. And so I have these things set up that I can go to when I'm not out having fun, but I need to be encouraged.
Yes. Yes.
So I limit toxicity. I don't entertain that. I just entertain the positive, the encouraging, and the upbuilding. So
Gotcha.
that's the advice that I would give individuals. And if there's anybody out there that need help with that, what you have to do, they can reach out to me on Facebook.
I'm going to leave
my
your information at the end of this
Okay.
clip. I'll make sure I get the information at the end of this clip. And if anybody would like to reach out to Tim and get some more advice, use his ear, his experience, and use the grace of God inside of him, you're welcome to do that. I will leave the information. But this is DTM Real Talk, and we're just doing what? Keeping it
real.
Thanks for watching DTM Real Talk. Be sure to join us for more conversation. And oh yeah, don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe while you're there.